What's up, guys? Johnny Ritchie here, Rockwell Watches, hanging out with my good friend Paul Jensen, owner of Team Throttle Monster. Paul, last time we talked, Monster Jam was right around the corner. You guys are getting prepped. The shop was chaos. Guys getting ready for the season to start. And, of course, first event, Salt Lake City, Utah. Want to show out with a bang. In your opinion, how did it go? How did Salt Lake go? How did the lead up go? How did everything turn out for Salt Lake City and you guys and Monster Jam?
Well, the lead up, especially to Salt Lake City, is that being our first show. It's also our hometown show, so that kind of gives everybody a little added anxiety. And November and December are the 2 months that we completely tear the trucks down, go through everything we can possibly think of. But monster trucks in a lot of ways are a great big tractor with a lot of horsepower. And so, you can't possibly know each and everything that's going to happen and when it's going to break or go out, or, especially with the electrical components and things. We pulled the 4 arena trucks out of the shop, and 2 of the trucks, the rear steer stopped working, halfway out the shop. It's negative 30 degrees here in Utah that time of year. So now we're freezing and trying to fix the rear steer. So basically what happened is from pressure washing the trucks, a little bit of water will get inside those electric motors, and then the trucks sit November and December, and that kind of seizes up the motor a little bit, rusts some things, and stops the brushes from making contact with the motor, and that gives us no power, and so the rear tires won't turn. So we got those swapped.
Which in the monster truck industry, you have to have rear steer. I mean, you can't even be on the course without it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think rear steer is more important than the front steering, right? Yeah, so we get to Salt Lake City, and we unload the trucks, and we brought out a new paint scheme for the Velociraptor this year. So that
seems to be a hit. Cool. Seems to be pretty cool. A lot of comments online. People are liking that.
Everybody loves it, and so that was part of the build up to the show as well, is keeping that body in the trailer and hidden, because if we don't, there's going to be a super fan somewhere that's hiding over a fence that's going to get a picture of it, and then it's going to be all over the internet and ruin our surprise. So we did a good job at that, and we got the show started, and they did 2 full practices. So before we start the very first event, we do 2 full practices. Basically, they go through an entire event twice. So they go through racing, they go through 2-wheel skills, they go through donuts and freestyle. And that's kind of where we work all the kinks out.
Talk about how important that is, right? Because without that, can you imagine getting into a show without that practice, and then the crowd sitting around picking their nose because things are getting worked on and fixed. So talk a little bit about that, how important that is for those practice runs.
I mean, the practice runs are crucial because, everybody on our team, we want to win. We want to build those points and make it to the World Finals. And so, and that's a tall task in itself. You have to be consistent. You have to make every element. And so, especially the first show out, we want to make sure all that's worked out so that we don't go out there and, burn up a rear steer motor or something like that, and put us that far back in the points when we're just getting started for the season. We'd rather start out on top.
Sure, out with a bang.
Yeah.
So Paul, when you talk about the ins and outs and the intricacies of this business and how Monster Jam runs, you got a guy actually from Monster Jam that comes to the shop, looks at all the trucks, and then gives you a laundry list of items that need to be worked on, fixed, repaired. So talk a little bit about that. The guy shows up, hey, boom, 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 and then some maybe things you weren't expecting, some things maybe that you were, but then hey, you've got to get all this stuff done.
Yeah. I mean, it works out great for us because then we're not wondering, right? We're not showing up, once again, we're not showing up to the first show and then there's something safety-wise or whatnot that that we're not up to snuff on, and so we can't run or something like that. So, Monster Jam, they fly out a tech official in November or December, and they go over every single truck. I mean, they go over the truck with a fine-tooth comb. Everything from safety features to updates for the year. One of the updates this last year was backup cameras. Every truck has to have a functioning backup camera. They crack inspect the chassis, the hubs, everything on the truck. They go through, and then they give us a list at the end, and they check everything off, and anything we need to fix or change, We have to have that done by the first show. And then once we get to the first event, that tech official then goes over every truck again
to make sure that
we've done it and everything's good. So
and things can still break. Things can still happen.
Yes.
You know, talk about the rear steer being a problem. So talk about running practice, get through it. What were some of the issues right out of the gate? What were some of the things that you knew? Oh man, we gotta fix this.
Yeah. So the biggest issues we had during practice this year were EFI related. All right. Our crank sensors that control the timing and essentially how the truck runs. A couple of those got destroyed, and so Tim's truck, for instance, wasn't running very well, so then we had to put a crank sensor on it and, working out all those bugs. And then one of them, the distributor cap had melted inside, and they didn't know it, so it was running a little bit funny. Also, when we put our headers on each year, you put it on when the motor's cold, and the header's steel or stainless steel, and the heads are aluminum. So when the motor heats up, aluminum expands a lot more than steel does, and so then that will make the bolts loose. So we have to go through and we have to tighten those bolts when the motor warms up, and the trucks will run not the greatest before we do that, simply because when it's sucking clean air into the header, then our O2 sensor reads that the motor's lean. And so when it reads that it's lean, it just tries throwing more fuel at it. And so then we have to tighten the headers. And then we have to go through a process of clearing the learn table, because our EFI has a learn feature on it. Well, now it's learned where it wants to run, thinking that the motor's lean, and it's not lean. So then we have to clear the learn tables and, kind of go through that process. And there's always something that you're not thinking of that, there's just so many boxes to check. But so that's the good part about practice. And, even going through all of that in practice, we still get to the show, and the third truck, for instance, our rear steer motor locked up on.
Why?
It ran fine for 3 days, and then decided
that wasn't it. The fourth wasn't it.
Yeah. The fourth event wasn't going to play ball. So then we had to switch that out, and that was kind of comical the way that whole deal happened. I get there, and the guys are thinking that it's a solenoid issue, and so they change the solenoid out, and it's a different solenoid than what we normally use. So, make a long story short, it could be bolted up the same.
All right, Paul. So, practice. Realistically, to be completely honest, you weren't there to work. You were there to kind of hang out. All the guys are going 100 miles an hour, and you feel like, well, I got to step in and I got to help out a little bit, right? Obviously, Tim, amazing under pressure, driving, fixing, doing all the things. But then you're like, hey guys, let me get in here and help. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Making that transition from a guy that's just coming to hang and I'm getting right in and mixing it up.
Yeah. So one thing I have to my benefit is I started working on monster trucks, I don't know, back in probably 99 or 2000 with my stepdad, and he taught me just about every possible way you can make something on a monster truck work that's not supposed to work. And so
you can rig it up, whatever it is.
Yeah, we've replaced, pocket bearings on we didn't have a pocket bearing to replace the bearing on a rear diff. And so we took a 2-piece collar, put it in there, sanded it out until, the pinion fit, and it worked all weekend.
Yeah.
Just things like that.
You got through it.
Yeah, I always said if I was ever going to do junkyard wars, my stepdad, Craig Christensen, would be the guy I'm calling, because
you can make it work.
Yes, he can build a lot of horsepower out of a lawnmower. I'm convinced. So anyways, make a long story short, I helped him build several trucks, and there's not a piece on a monster truck that I don't fully understand exactly how it functions. And so sometimes the guys get busy, and like you said, Tim and those guys, they're also driving and working. So when one truck goes down, and we have 4 trucks there, the other 3 guys and their crew guys are still having to, perform at the show. So anyways, I show up and I'm kind of watching what's going on, and I figure out that it's, they thought it was a solenoid, and they changed the solenoid out. And our starter solenoid and our rear steer solenoid are right by each other, and it's easy to get the two mixed up. So they swapped out one of the solenoids. Like I said, it was a different configuration, and so it wouldn't quite go into the bracket that we normally use. And part of that bracket is a grounding wire. So, make a long story short, the grounding wire didn't get hooked up to that solenoid, which ended up being the starter solenoid. So I didn't know all this at the time, so I changed the electric motor out on the rear steer pump. And I'm like, okay, rear steer works, great. So I go back to watching the show, and I'm like, where in the heck is why aren't they pulling out here yet? So I go back out there, and they tried starting the truck. Well, the truck wouldn't start.
Oh.
Because now the starter solenoid doesn't have a ground.
Okay, got it.
So then we had to get that, so it's just this chain reaction of things that isn't really anybody's fault. It could happen to any of us. And so, anyway, so we got that squared around and got the truck started and got it back out there. But
tell me this. Is it stressful for you? Obviously, he's the team owner and the guy that, these guys kind of look up to. You're the guy, right? Do you feel like, is it stressful for you to come to these and then, kind of anticipating what the outcome could be, but then not, like you said, you're like, where's the truck? Where's the damn truck?
Yeah.
Is the truck coming out?
Yeah.
Oh, do you feel that pressure, a little bit of stress? Are you feeling anxious? Or are you just like, we'll just get in there and get it done?
Yeah.
Because you're such an easygoing guy.
Yeah.
Like, nighttime, you're just, you kind of just go with the flow, but there's got to be a little bit of stress, right?
So, the stress for me is whoever's driving the truck letting them down, because like I said, we want to make sure that they get out there and that they can perform and do what they love and gather as many points they can.
But no excuses, right? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and I mean, when something breaks on a monster truck, you really can't decide whether you're going to be stressed out about it or not. You either jump and you get it done or you don't,
That's it.
So you do the best you can, right?
Sure.
I mean, whether it's a blown up motor or a transmission, a rear end, a housing, a shock, whatever it is, you may have 20 minutes, you may have an hour, so that's the goal, right? And if it takes 21 minutes, you miss the next element.
You miss the next, yeah, sure.
But yeah, you're just always trying to get back for the next element.
All right, we got a question from Touche Motorsports 199. They'd love to know more about the engines. Are they wet sump? Do you run an accumulator? And how do you keep the bearings alive?
So they're not a dry sump. We use a regular oil pump. Our motor's in backwards, so we use a marine oil pan, which basically picks oil up from the front of the motor, since that's the back of our truck. So when you take off, you're doing a wheelie, whatever, oil's getting picked up at the front of the motor. We do run an oil accumulator. It's a 3/4 accumulator. When the oil pressure, like in a stoppie or something, gets down to about 20 pounds, red light comes on, oil accumulator kicks in, it starts dumping 3/4 of oil into the motor and keeps everything lubed. As far as bearings go, we run a little bit thicker oil than everybody. We run steel rods instead of aluminum rods. Aluminum cushion's a little bit better, so we run a thicker oil, a 60 weight race, red line oil, and it keeps everything cushioned. We don't really have bearing problems.
All right, Paul, next question is from Bobby1846. They don't go to monster trucks anymore because you don't crush cars, is what they're saying. Just dirt jumps. Why not? Talk a little about, are you still crushing cars?
So, yeah, we crush cars. Some of the Monster Jam events now have a few cars in it. Our own promotion here in Utah and locally, we have crush cars at some of those events. The biggest issue with crush cars is, number one, all the preparation that goes into prepping those cars. And, a lot of the places we go are rodeo arenas or things like that, and so they don't want any glass or pieces that can get in a horse's hoof or anything like that. So that's the main factor for me is when you build jumps out of something structural, whether it be tires, concrete K-rails, dirt, it's a level playing field, right? Everybody goes out there, they have the same jumps that they've got to try and navigate, and whoever does the best job.
Yeah, makes sense.
If it's all crush cars,
Who knows?
the first guy out, like, it's game on, right? Like, he's hitting stuff and his truck's flying 30 feet in the air, and, well,
If you're the fifth guy.
yeah, if you're the fifth guy, or like on a stadium tour, if you're the 12th guy, there's nothing left. I mean, good luck trying to get your truck off the ground. Every car's smashed flat. Some of them are smashed this way, some of them are smashed that way, and your truck's, all over the place. And so I think that it's a much better show without cars, even though people like to see the cars crushed. And maybe another reason we've gone away from cars a little bit is, we want our tires to be as lightweight as possible. Well, in doing that, they're more vulnerable to be ripped and tore and ruined. And then, nobody wants to see a 3-wheeled monster truck out there.
I know I don't.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, this question is from Isaac Tucker, VJ3CQ. They want to know, why do you run an intake on top instead of a traditional blower like other trucks on the circuit?
So basically there's a few reasons. So a Pro Charger, typically we would have to run an intercooler, and we'd have to keep that full of ice all the time. And also most Pro Chargers are ran off of the crankshaft, and that's where we run our fuel pump. We have to run a mechanical fuel pump, because if there's ever a fire or anything like that, or the truck needs to be shut off, we can't run an electric fuel pump, because then the electric fuel pump stays on and keeps fueling whatever's
on fire.
Whatever's happening. Yeah. And aside from that, way back when, the monster truck gurus got together and said, if you're going to have a monster truck and you're going to race in MTRA or Monster Jam or any of these places, this is the specifications. So it's an 871 blower. You can run it 10% over, and you can't have a motor bigger than 572 cubic inches, and it has to run on methanol. That's pretty much the rules and the limitations, which is good, because we build plenty of horsepower with the motors that we have, and if you just made it unlimited, there would be guys out there with 3,000 horsepower and just stuff blowing apart, and it would just be too much. And so that's kind of our keeping it even for everybody to it's no different than any other type of racing. NASCAR, they have to have a very specific chassis, a very specific motor, so everybody's on an even playing field.
Sure. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
With that, with Mike.
Paul, this question is for Saline Skate 360. How long has Team Throttle Monster been a thing?
I want to say 2016, 2017. Started Team Throttle Monster. One truck, Kamikaze. And then my brother Mike, he wanted a truck. So we're like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And monster trucks have to tour in pairs, because one truck doesn't make enough money, so you've got to have two. Right?
Then you got to have 4,
yeah,
and then you got to have 6,
yeah,
and then you got to have 8,
exactly,
and then 10.
Then Zach wanted one, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, if Zach builds one, then I got to build another one. So then we have 2 in the trailer. So then Too Tall came on board, and we built Too Tall a truck. And then Dalton came along, and so then we built 5, and then 6, and then now we have 9 trucks.
9 trucks.
8 of them are torn full time, and then we have a spare truck right now at the shop.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
Okay. All right. Oh shoot. All right, we've got a question from Nick Spangler 5508. This is on your YouTube channel. Basically, this is what Nick's saying. Well, I sure hope Mike Christensen can finish each show. His truck seems cursed. So many issues that can't be controlled. I know it sucks for Mike. I hope this year is better than last year. After Mike missing 7 freestyles, 4 in a row, and 2 skills challenges at least. Will he be able to complete shows this year?
Well, last year was rough for Mike. I think he went through 4 motors, just stupid things, being messed up, an oil pump drive breaking, things like that. And luckily we have all that worked out this year, and he's actually doing pretty good. He's moved up, I think, 3 spots in the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we can keep that streak alive.
Keep that streak alive.
Maybe the fans should start sending Mike a fortune cookie every week. I don't know.
Say a prayer for
right.
Mike and Vendetta.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, we got a question from Mountain_Man71. If Monster Jam owns the trucks, who pays the bills? Are you guys employees or are you owners? They're very curious about that business side of it.
So Monster Jam pays us to perform at their events. Basically, it's kind of a 10-year thing. The longer you've been driving for Monster Jam, and the better you do, that kind of determines your pay. Every Monster Jam show you see in the United States, or every tour per se, half of the trucks are owned by Monster Jam and half of them are independently owned. So I own all of my trucks. I get paid a fee to
show up and perform.
Bring those trucks there to perform. Yeah.
All right. Well, Paul, thanks so much for coming and telling us a little bit about how it went. A little kind of director's cut of behind the scenes with Monster Jam and Team Throttle Monster. Congratulations to the guys, Berto, Devin, Tim, and Alex, and
Carson
for filling in. No, but thanks, guys. Good job this past week. We're really looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season plays out. And Paul, thanks again for coming out and looking forward to doing more of these.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.